Frank, a brilliant youngster, enters the inventors competition at the 1964 New York World's Fair. After Frank admits the prototype jetpack doesn't function well, Judge Nix swiftly changes his mind, although he was first rather impressed. Frank isn't allowed to compete until the jetpack is fully functional, despite Athena, Nix's aide, having feelings for him. Coming to terms with all the times his own father warned him he was wasting his time, Frank is devastated as he leaves. Athena approaches him out of nowhere, hands him a blue T-shaped lapel button with an orange center, and orders him to follow Nix covertly. Since Nix and his companions are planning to ride a popular attraction with an extremely long line, Frank decides to slip past security and hop aboard an empty boat. Around halfway through the journey, a laser finds Frank's pin and activates a trapdoor, leading the boat into a dimly lit tunnel. Suddenly, a futuristic-looking wagon materializes, and Frank eagerly hops inside. However, as soon as he does, metal blinds obscure all openings, and the vehicle starts trembling wildly. Until the wagon comes to a halt, Frank is unable to rise up off the floor. Frank comes out onto a platform shrouded in thick fog as the doors open. He is shocked to see Athena and Nix in a flying car as it flies past. Giant robots materialize in front of Frank and attempt to thwart his pursuit of them. In his haste to outrun the robotic arms, the child races around the platform, but his jetpack breaks as he crashes to the floor. Thanks to the robot's repairs, Frank flies through the fog and discovers he's in Tomorrowland, a futuristic city filled with only the brightest minds. When he sees Athena, Frank lands next to her and takes the chance to show Nix that he's fixed the jetpack. Nix ignores him, but Athena takes Frank's hand to show him what his life will be like from now on. Years later, in 2015, teenage girl Casey sneaks into NASA launch site in Florida to sabotage all the machinery that will be used for the demolition because she doesn't want her dad, who works as a NASA engineer, to lose his job. Athena is watching it all from the shadows, and after Casey returns home, Athena uses a small scanner to get Casey's DNA from her bike helmet and codes it into her last Tomorrowland pin. The next morning, Casey's dad, Eddie, gets a call from work explaining the situation. Casey thinks she saved his job, but Eddie reveals they'll bring replacement cranes, so Casey really needs to stop trying. However, Casey reminds him, keeping up hope is more important. In the evening, Casey tries to sabotage the demolition again, but this time the police are waiting for her and she gets arrested. Some hours later, someone pays the bail, and Casey picks up her belongings to return home. Among all the things, she finds the pin, and when she touches it, she suddenly sees a vision of a different place. The pin falls, and when Casey touches it again, the same thing happens. The next time, Casey grabs the pin properly and finds herself looking at a huge city in the distance. But when she tries to walk to it, the pin falls and she is in jail again because walking made her bump against things and people in the room. To avoid more trouble, Casey picks up the pin using gum wrapper. On their way home, he scolds Casey for her actions, so she makes him touch the pin, promising it'll explain everything. However, when Eddie touches the pin, nothing happens. Confused, Casey touches the pin herself and appears in the other world, coming to the conclusion this only works for her. Eddie gets tired of Casey rambling about the pin and takes it away from her. When they get home, Casey waits for Eddie to fall asleep to steal the pin from his night table. As soon as she touches it, she appears in the other world, and walking toward the city makes her bump against the walls of her house and even fall down the stairs. Casey goes to the middle of a huge field and touches the pin, allowing her to finally appear in Tomorrowland. While taking the train to go further into the city, she discovers the pin has a timer that is going down and that nobody can see her. Casey leaves the train at the next stop, and she sees some important scientists entering a different kind of wagon. She tries to follow them, but suddenly water appears around her because the pin timer is about to reach 0. Casey tries to ignore it and pushes through the water, but soon Tomorrowland disappears. As soon as she returns home, Casey wakes her brother Nate up and asks him for the password to their dad's computer. The siblings search for the pin online and find an ad from a store. Casey writes down the shop address and asks Nate to tell their father she's going camping with some friends. Meanwhile, Casey makes it to the shop from the ad. The eccentric clerks are clearly interested in it and confirmed that what Casey saw was real. Tomorrowland is a place where all the brightest minds gathered to create freely. The clerks want to buy the pin and to know where Casey got it, but when Casey refuses to cooperate, they press a button to lock the door and reveal a pair of futuristic weapons that can shoot plasma. Suddenly, a grenade breaks through the window and freezes the clerks inside a force field. An armed Athena enters the shop too, and when Athena removes one of their heads, Casey is shocked to discover both clerks were animatronics. Athena drags Casey out of the shop just in time to avoid the explosion. Then Athena breaks a car window to open it and pushes Casey inside. On the road, Casey begins asking questions, and Athena tells her she was the one that gave her the pin. How Athena fixes herself because she's an animatronic as well. Hours later, Casey wakes up when she's suddenly pushed off the truck in front of a house in the countryside. Casey has no choice but to approach the house. Casey knocks on the door and shows her pin to the camera, asking to be taken to Tomorrowland. Casey refuses to leave and waits outside even while it rains. By starting a fire on the plowing truck, Casey gets Frank to leave the house, and while he's too busy putting the flames out, Casey runs inside and locks the door. Casey begins looking around the house, finding all sorts of crazy inventions. One particular machine plays a record of little Frank trying to make Athena laugh. In another room, she finds a bunch of screens keeping up with the news, and a timer that is slowly going down. Frank gets back into the house, ready to kick Casey out, but she convinces him to give her some answers. Frank was kicked out of Tomorrowland for building something he shouldn't have, which is the timer connected to the screens. So she wouldn't believe it, because they need to be able to make their own destiny. This statement causes the percentage on the screen to fall, which greatly impresses Frank. Their conversation is suddenly interrupted by the arrival of Dave and his agents, who are actually robots looking for Casey, until Dave catches up to them and holds Frank at gunpoint. Luckily, Casey finds a bat and uses it to beat Dave to a pulp. One more robot comes after them and tries to grab the tub, but at that moment, Frank launches it, causing the capsule to fly out and land on the lake. The duo is suddenly startled by a light approaching them, but it's just Athena that came to pick them up. And as soon as they hit the road, Frank and Athena begin arguing. Frank thinks Athena puts up fake emotions to lure you in and abandon you later, to take them to the local station, where Frank has installed his secret network that transmits to his house. Casey discovers they're at the top of the Eiffel Tower. There's a guard near the door that allows Casey to knock the guard out with just a light tap. They enter a room with an exhibition with famous inventors, and Frank explains that Eiffel, Verne, Tesla, and Edison were the ones that started Tomorrowland by using the Eiffel Tower as an antenna that took them to the other world. There have always been rumors of a secret entrance, and after searching around, Frank activates it. This causes the Eiffel Tower to split into two and reveal a rocket, so the trio hurries inside, opening a portal as it falls at a great speed. Moments later, the group arrives in Tomorrowland. The authorities saw them fall and are coming after them. So Frank makes Athena hide a special bomb he brought with him inside her body. The first one to meet them is Nix, the city governor, who wants to arrest them. Frank and Athena quickly change his mind by informing him Casey was capable of lowering the percentage on the screens. Shocked, Nix takes the trio to the headquarters where they keep Frank's dangerous invention called a tachyon machine. When they take the elevator, Casey sees holograms, which happen to be flashes of the future. The group enters the center of the machine. Casey is shocked to see herself in her house a few mornings ago. So Casey begins going through history at a high speed until she finally sees the issue. The machine has predicted that in 58 days, the world will end. And Nix explains he doesn't care because that's the world that will end, not Tomorrowland. Casey refuses to accept this, and her attitude causes the screen to flicker for a second, showing a better world. As she begins to rant, she suddenly has a moment of realization. Frank has been pirating the machine signal to watch it at his house, and the signal is floating around Earth, zapping these ideas of doom into people's minds. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, but if Casey could change it with her optimism, it means that turning it off would allow people to see the light again. The guards come to pick the trio up so they can be kicked out of Tomorrowland through a portal. Casey tries to tell Nix about her discovery and asks him to turn off the machine, but Nick says there's no off button. His calm attitude makes Frank realize the truth. In Nick's opinion, it isn't the machine's fault. Humanity has brought this to itself. Frank pretends to accept this and shakes hands with Nick, but only to touch his bracelet and start the machine platform again. Athena and Casey knock out the guards while Frank fights Nick, who activates 2 robots to go after the girls. Frank asks Athena to use the bomb he gave her. Athena gains control of one of the robots and uses it to push the other one through the portal, causing it to attack Nick too. Casey manages to activate the bomb, but when she's about to throw it, Nick regains control of the bracelet and drags the platform down. Athena rushes to catch the platform with her robot. At that moment, Casey finds the bomb, which is about to explode. Athena has no choice but to open the portal again, and once the men run back inside, they throw the bomb into the portal so it can explode away from them. The portal breaks and falls on top of Nick, capturing him. However, there's a gun nearby that he reaches in order to kill Frank. Athena sees Frank dying and realizes it's a flash from the future, so she runs to put herself between Frank and the shot. Casey takes the gun from Nick, and Frank tries to take Athena to a repair shop, but Athena asks him to stop because there isn't enough time. Before she died, she needs Frank to know something very important, and she proceeds to play a series of recordings from the time they spent together all those years ago. And she kept voice diaries that described how Frank made her feel things that robots shouldn't. Frank is glad to hear Athena did like him too, and that she never stopped believing in him, so now it's time for Athena to go. And she wants them to use that explosion to stop the machine. Frank uses a jetpack to fly Athena up, and after they say their goodbyes, Athena is dropped inside the machine. The whole structure explodes, and the debris falls on Nick, killing him. Tomorrowland loses its power, and Frank tries to keep control of the jetpack to at least land safely in the river. Casey can reunite with her family. Then together they begin working on restarting the PIM program, for which they build a bunch of robots, like Athena. These robots use a portal to travel all over the world and leave pins for the bright minds that may help them make a better future for Earth.